I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Hey, Mr. Binks, you know how awful dog theft is. It's been going on for years. It soared during the pandemic, but it was going on before the pandemic, and it's going on after the pandemic. This is why we're now jumping on Zoom to talk to Dr. Dan Allen about how his new petition is lobbying government to make change. Dr. Dan Allen, I'm so excited that you're joining us on A Dog's Life.
No, thank you ever so much for having me on the show.
Because in case anybody doesn't know, apart from being a geography lecturer at Keele University, you are a massive dog lover and you are founder of really the Pet Theft Reform group that is all connected to SAMPA, the Stolen and Missing Pets Alliance. Is that right, Dan?
That's right, yeah. I'm an animal geographer, so I'm really interested in the cultural significance of animals around the world. And yeah, teamed up with the Stolen Missing Pets Alliance back in 2017. And we founded the Pet Theft Reform campaign, which has been going ever since.
Yes, and very, very needed. I mean, back then, I suppose before the pandemic, I think people think that dog theft, which is, it's all pets, but primarily dogs, that, the theft of dogs just exploded during lockdown, didn't it, Dr. Dan?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's something where the crime got worse. So it's something whereby, I suppose, an opportunity was seen. It's a low risk, high reward crime. And I suppose because of the lockdowns, other sorts of criminality wasn't necessarily happening. So that was something where the thieves really sort of got into this more than they had done previously. But alongside that, because we were in lockdown and, people wanted canine companionship. They were lonely. They were and they had time to potentially train their dogs. And what happened then was there's a massive rise in prices of pups being sold. So it became this kind of easy way of making money for people who are into that kind of crime. Dogs being stolen, dogs going to puppy farms, puppies being born, being sold for extortionate prices. And yeah, it's something which has always happened. It's not just lockdown related, but it was something where the media really picked up on it. And that's something which I think in the last year or so, the media stopped talking about pet theft and dog theft in particular, even though it is still very much happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is the worry. I mean, certainly in lockdown, that the prices of dogs,
Yeah.
I mean, it's eye-watering, ridiculous because the demand outstripped the supply. And of course, because we couldn't go anywhere really, everything was being transferred onto the internet. So that, I think, made it easier for some of these scammers to scam people and pursue their dog theft. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's something whereby, things like Lucy's Law, which came in, which is really important, that, where's mum, meeting the pup with the mother. That's something which couldn't be done during lockdown because you weren't allowed to go to certain places to buy puppies and so forth. So there's ways in which the pandemic basically helped hide some of the things which were happening, which, meant more money could be made and more pets and more families were potentially going to suffer.
Yes. I mean, lots of people were being ripped off, weren't they? They were putting big
Yeah.
deposits down on a puppy they'd seen as a photograph, and then that puppy never existed. And those scammers had run off with, £1,000 or whatever. I mean, very,
Yeah.
very easy money. And as you say, the key bit is really no real high risk, maximum sentence of 6 months, if that. Dr. Dan.
Well, that's it. There's the chances of being caught for stealing a dog are minimal. So some of the research that I've done looking at freedom information requests from the police, obviously a lot of them are inconsistent, a lot of them are incomplete, but it does give us an idea about how many people get caught, how many people are charged. And recently there was just 1%. So 99% of the people who have stolen dogs have got away with it. That's incredible. It's terrible. It's something which needs to change. And the thing is, this idea of it being a low risk, high reward. And I suppose during the pandemic, it was even more of a high reward because the amount of money that dogs could be sold for and the scams that were happening was the fact that there's no deterrent whatsoever. if you're caught and you do get sentenced, the likelihood is you're going to get a small fine just for stealing a pet. Obviously, there's other things included. You might end up getting custodial sentences. But what the issue is here, if you've got a rescue dog, which is worth under £500, or if you've got a pedigree dog, which is over £500, in terms of the Theft Act as it stands, for sentencing, you can go into one of those two categories. So it's a differentiation in terms of what can be sentenced, what can be handed down, whether you've got a dog which is monetary value is lower than 500 or over 500. So there's a difference there. There's a distinction between dogs, which are family members, which are being taken from you, and the potential sentence that can be given to those who are caught if they are sentenced. And that's wrong. There should be no monetary value attached to this. It should be down to the fact that they are family members. We have an emotional bond. They're sentient beings. And it should be looked upon as being an animal welfare offence, not silly. It's not the same as stealing a laptop or a mobile phone or a plant pot, but in law it is.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, the law, the Theft Act, is it 1967 it came in, and it hasn't
67,
been,
68, yeah,
yeah.
it hasn't, it's outdated in relation to this crime.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Probably it was outdated then, to be honest with you, but I suppose people wouldn't think, well, there were certainly way less dogs in the country in 1967. I don't think we even know those figures. I've recently actually, Dan tried to find the figures of the dog population of 2002 for a feature I've been
Okay.
writing, and can't find it on the internet. And of course, the PDSA have only been doing their poor report for the last decade.
Yeah.
So, and I was just really wanting to find the figure because I think it was about 4 million at the time. So that's when I got my first dog as a grown-up, Molly, and my first bull terrier, you see, and I can't find it anywhere, not an accurate figure. So I couldn't use it in this feature in the end. So, yeah, so, we've got this huge boom really in dogs, and there's a whole market attached to dogs now. Dogs are to say a real thing is a bit of a massive understatement, but you're right, it's this emotional attachment, of course, and that they are a member of your family that isn't taken into consideration at all by this Theft Act, is
Yeah,
it?
and that's the devastating thing. It's, having spoken to so many families about this and sort of talked about their experiences. We've looked at, just what they're going through, and it's absolutely terrible. If you think about the reason why I got into pet theft reform is I had my own dog Rupert, who sadly passed away a few months back.
I'm so
Which
sorry. I'm so sorry. I've just got to say so sorry. My cat passed away a month ago, and I'm
oh,
still, yeah, well, I know it's really awful actually, because he was toxology actually. I mean, I knew he'd been poisoned, but
oh,
toxology only totally confirmed this week. So it's sort of just reared its, you know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like rubbing salt into the wound a bit. And that's due to so many foxes now
oh
having
no,
nowhere to live in the shires. So they're all living in London.
mm.
And
Oh,
they're
I'm so sorry
causing,
about that.
oh, thanks. No, cheers. No,
Yes,
the cats are the same. I mean, they're so different to dogs, of course, but you form such bonds. I mean, it's this interspecies connection. And
yeah.
I actually didn't realize you were an animal geographer. That is so interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, that's it. And for me, it's that human-animal bond which is key, and that's what I'm really interested in. The research I'm doing at the moment about pet theft, about dog theft in particular, but also looking at no pet policy in relation to different spaces. So it could be in relation to universities or housing, or it could be hospitals. They're the sort of things that we're kind of looking at the moment, and just the general idea about pet loss. And as I was saying about Rupert and with your cat as well, anybody who's experienced the loss of their pet, dog or cat or whatever it may be, they go through that grieving process. It's something I still, it's 5 months now, and I'm still heartbroken. It's a part of me is gone. Myself and Louise, it's unbearable. It's 11 and a half years old. He's been with Louise all that time, been with me for 8.5 years, and we spent so much time together. And it was just, he's just a unique individual, as a character. He loved every single person that he met. Everybody was his friend. A lovely dog. And for me, when he was around, the reason I started the campaign was the thought of somebody taking him from us, and the idea of what would I do? Where would I go? How would I go on living? That was the kind of inspiration. and then chatting to SAMPA, chatting to Debbie Matthews, chatting to Jane Hayes at Dog Lost, and finding all these different people coming to me and asking, can you help put stuff on Twitter and that kind of stuff and other social media, just trying to get the message out for these lost and stolen pets. And I was like, something bigger has to be done. These stolen posters are really important. You need to keep putting them out, keep sharing them. But we need to find a way in which we can actually get to the root of this issue, which includes changing the law. And that's where these pet theft reform campaign petitions started coming out. This is the 5th one now. We've had 3 in my name, which passed 100,000. We had an independent one, which we supported and promoted, which had over 300,000. And now the current one, make pet abduction a specific criminal offence, is just over 15,000. So again, going for 100,000, showing the public support. This is something which is important to everybody that has a pet. It's something which can happen to anybody.
Well, absolutely. And, the thing was, government during lockdown, I mean, we did a podcast, I guess it must have been in 2021, and you weren't available to join us, but Ian Duncan Smith kindly stepped in as he really at that time took the reins really and turbocharged the pet theft reform into fitting in with the animal kept bill, sentience bill in brackets, which unfortunately seems to have been, well, it has been shelved, hasn't it, Dr. Dan?
It has, yes. It's Ian Duncan Smith has done an amazing job at supporting and promoting this within Parliament. He's been absolutely amazing, and it's something where he's looked at this issue. It's something which, again, he's like a lot of us has dogs and had dogs in the past, and recognizes that bond. And it was because of him and his kind of work with people like Priti Patel and other people within the government at that time that the Pet Theft Task Force was created. It was a government initiative. The research which was taking place from all manner of different folk led to the recommendation of having a pet abduction offence, specifically looking at dogs initially, with the option of including other pets afterwards. And it ended up going in the Kept Animals Bill, and we were kind of really, really, really happy that had happened. But the problem with that bill is it had so much in there, not particularly controversial issues, but what we found that there were things which could become controversial. Nothing to do with pet abduction. It was other stuff within the bill, this Christmas tree bill, which led to it being postponed and postponed and postponed, and then eventually dropped. So in May 2023, the bill was dropped. It was a government bill which was promised. Pet abduction had that pet theft task force in place, which made that recommendation. Yet at the moment, we're in limbo. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. Apparently, and hopefully, fingers crossed, all the things within that bill are still going to come through and become law as individual bills. Personally, I don't think that's possible within the time available, but hopefully there will be things such as pet abductions, such as puppy imports, such as ear cropping and so forth, that will make its way through, but it's going to be really tight. So that's the reason for this petition, is really kind of making sure that people are aware that all of our past signatures, and there's been hundreds of thousands, almost over 500,000, they've all done really well in terms of getting pet theft reform to where it is at this stage, but we need to keep keeping the pressure up. We need to keep showing that pets and dogs in particular aren't specific, they're not just personal property. They're not, they shouldn't be looked at in terms of monetary value when it comes to sentencing. We want the government to recognise the emotional and welfare impacts this crime has on people and pets. So the pet abduction offence is something which could show that. It would demonstrate that, and it will also make it easier then to change and have reforms within certain organisations, such as the police, such as veterinary practices, and so forth. So it's a very complicated puzzle, I suppose, pet theft reform, but it will all come together at some stage.
Right, gosh, I really do hope so. I mean, do you think the tricky sticking point is making animals sentient?
Yeah, it's something. I've been looking at the sentience bill, and it's something which it does seem to be slightly problematic. It doesn't seem to be inclusive of the things, again, which were being promised, and that was being promised way back before Brexit, wasn't it? In terms of enshrining sentience into British law. I'm not a legal expert. It's just in relation to my speaking to other people from the legal profession and so forth. It's something where, if sentience had been enshrined into law, that would be taken into account in relation to the Theft Act, in relation to the sentencing guidelines of pets being stolen or abducted. it hasn't been. So,
No, no,
um,
it's just quite funny. I mean, it's quite funny. It's just that I know lawyers when they're studying to be a lawyer, the first case they ever study is that you can never sue a vet because animals are chattel.
yeah, that's
So
yeah,
yeah, I
criminal
mean,
damage as opposed to yeah,
yes, everyone can think about that for a few seconds.
yeah.
Yeah, so I feel that's partly the main stumbling block, actually. Yeah, so working on this sort of chattel versus sentient issue, Dan, do you think it's down to semantics and language that dog theft, you think of you steal a car, or but you think of dog abduction, you abduct children.
Yeah, I think the language is important, and I think that's something which we've kind of worked hard to sort of start changing, I suppose, in terms of the public, in terms of the political debates about this. Um, Pet theft reform now, obviously, theft is something which is in place in relation to chattel, which is any animals at this stage, which are companions or livestock or whatever. Um, Abduction is important here, I think. To make pet abduction a specific criminal offence is saying, well, actually, it's beyond theft. It's more than property. It's something whereby they are sentient, they are family members, in the way in which other abduction would be in the same, be said in the same way. Obviously, we're not equating it to exactly the same crime, but we are saying that it isn't simply theft. It's not simply taking a personal property. It's not chattel. It's something where they are individuals. They have their own likes, their dislikes. They have their own needs. They have their own connections and bonds. And people who are taking these animals from their family environments are, taking a lot away from it. It's going to have an emotional and a welfare impact on those stolen dogs. So it's a gradual transition between saying stolen, stolen and theft is something which is happening now in relation to the law. So that's the language which people recognise. What we've gradually done, I suppose, over the past 2 years is move towards abduction. Because they are being abducted, they are family members which are taken from, they're forcibly removed, and it's got similar impacts, some may say the same, as that forced separation between other family members. We're not equating it to other types of abduction. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get recognition for pets, which they rightly deserve, because currently the law is outdated. Currently, saying that any of your pets, any of your dogs or cats are simply chattel is wrong. It's completely wrong.
Well, of
They're
course it
not.
is. No, no, they're not. And what I think is very interesting, to be honest, is how one angle to really push, which I know you have, is the science behind this. Let's go to science. In 1967 or 68, the science to prove that dogs and cats, not so much cats, they're much more difficult to do these experiments on because they're cats. But with dogs, we know they have emotional intelligence now. But we only really decided we knew that about 13 years ago. So not awfully long when you think of the
Yeah.
history of us living with dogs. But, technology like the MRI scan, we've got the science behind this now to change the word from theft to abduction, quite honestly. Didn't exist in 1967 because MRI scans hadn't been invented. But, 13 years ago over in the States, first in Atlanta and then in New York, they've proved that dogs do have emotional intelligence by studying brain scans in certain situations, showing that dogs do definitely have the same neuro responses to certain stimuli that humans do in their brains. So they certainly are definitely now scientifically, definitely not chattel. They also, a very recent episodic memory study in Denmark proved that dogs do remember certain situations as being scary, as being great. And episodic memory was once actually only thought to be in the realm of humans. But about 5 years ago, some Danish scientists did totally prove that dogs do have episodic memory as well. So these sort of scientific studies surely also should be put forward to government to prove from a science perspective that we're not dealing with a laptop.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that you absolutely spot on. It's, there's science in place that recognizes that. The evidence base that we've been building from a kind of social perspective as well, in terms of the families involved, it's all kind of quite, obvious stuff, but it hasn't been researched before. And I think with all these things, pet theft reform is an evidence-based campaign. Obviously, doing research, creating evidence based upon what you're finding is a long, drawn-out process, but it's something which we're doing, and that's also informing. But you're quite right in terms of that science, that hard evidence there, that there should be that recognition. That's definitely something which I think we'll integrate that more in the future as well, because it's something which is, it's evidence, it's there, they're not chattel.
No, no. And the great things they dogs do for us. I mean, so much now is being sort of masked and almost not belittled, but humanization of dogs, has sort of reached epic proportions recently. And I think a lot of people who aren't particularly perhaps dog friendly are looking in on the world, and they maybe think it's a tad extraordinary, and not everyone likes dogs. You have to navigate the world always understanding that you might be just 6 feet away from somebody who's afraid of dogs, or just is allergic or doesn't like them. And that's absolutely fine. You have to recognize that as a proper dog owner. But I just feel, there is this science there, and the great benefits that dogs bring us, that's all scientifically proven as well. And in an age where, mental health now is thankfully, recognized as a definite condition that can be induced by loneliness, by overuse of technology. We are living very differently in a very short time, I think. I'm 58 now, and I feel the world's changed massively in my time as being a grown-up. Crazy, the internet didn't even exist when I brought my first dog into my life, Molly, when I was a grown-up. And then now look, everybody's buying dogs on the internet, selling them on the internet just with a click of a mouse. And I feel we've got that going on. It's all a bit mixed up, isn't it, Dan?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's ever changing, isn't it? And I think it's something where dogs get sort of pulled into this. There's various different agendas, I suppose, for different things which are happening, and obviously money making becomes a big part of this as well. But the changes have become massive, and it's something whereby I think, if you're thinking about how important dogs are to us, I Rupert changed my life for the better. It was amazing. He's made me a better person just by being with him for all those years. And I think if you think about assistance dogs, think about all the different ways in which assistance dogs are so beneficial, or just dogs with jobs that are doing various different things across the world. And they're the ones which are specially trained to perform certain practices and certain activities or exercise, whatever it might be. And that's also within our dogs. They're not trained in the same way, but I suppose the desire to want to be able to make us happy, make humans happy, is always going to be there. And whether that's the case of, in terms of being trained to be a guide dog, whether that's to be a case to be a bomb sniffing dog, or whether that's just a case of your dog being on the sofa next to you and going out for a walk every day and getting the ball when you throw it. I think that's something which makes dogs so important. It's just that bond that we have with them, between you, your family members, and that individual, is so important. It's so strong. And I think that's the other thing which, I suppose, looking at it in relation to the changes to the internet and the world, you just want to protect them even more, because there's more ways in which they, as individuals, can be, um,
Exploited.
That's the word. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing, with pet theft reform, getting this pet abduction offence, it's that recognition. It's saying, look, they deserve our protection. Not just as individuals, as families, but as a society. We should be protecting our pets. We should be protecting the people that have pets. And at the moment, I don't think that's happening.
No, and I think this is brilliant, and obviously the link to sign this petition, Dan, will definitely be in the show notes. Don't worry about that. I just feel, look, as an animal geographer, we've shared our life with dogs for over 30,000 years.
Yeah,
I believe we are partly dog, because we've evolved so, slowly but surely over all those years, eating the same food, breathing the same air, all of this. So it's epigenetic. So that it's very, very interesting, this bond. But ultimately, Z, I believe that we did such a great job of domesticating the dog that they fulfill the one thing that the human condition lacks, okay? And that is unconditional love. Because if you think about it, it doesn't really exist, really, truly, truly on a human level. But the dog has it. They don't care if
yeah,
you haven't done your roots. They don't care if you can't fit into those trousers. They are true. I see dogs, you see, as the truth. And I also believe you can't lie to a dog, because you can't, because of their huge olfaction. They
yeah.
know everything. And more than that, their capacity to tune into the sixth sense. They're so knowing that they are the most extraordinary creature, and they deserve our respect. I mean, they are supposed to be man's best friend. But the way I look at it now, a bit like you're saying, is that we could be turning into their worst enemy.
Yeah, I think so. It's just there's that innocence and that vulnerability. You get all the bad press in the media about dogs, but beneath those sorts of things which can happen, there is that kind of vulnerability, that innocence, that need to be connected with people, and I think that's something where we really do. They've been so good to us over the thousands of years, as you say. It's about time that we do some good things for them, I think.
And I think the thing is also, definitely stopping pet abduction, but also learning to understand how dogs communicate with each other so we can communicate better with them. Because I argue all the time on lots of media at the moment, I defend dogs, 'cause
Yeah,
a lot of these awful tragic accidents that have happened, and more of them are happening actually, which is a massive worry. They all could not have happened,
yeah,
because I don't think people understand the greatness of the dog, but they are dogs. And I think a lot of the problems we have with dogs at the moment is thinking that they are little people in furry
yeah,
suits.
yeah.
And they're so much greater than that. They are a species in their own right.
I most definitely. I think at the beginning when we were chatting, you mentioned the fact that so many dogs were bought during lockdown, and that's partly, I'd say. Again, I'm not a dog trainer or behaviourist. It's just obviously the area which you're in, but it's something where I think that lack of socialisation, that fact they weren't meeting other people, they weren't meeting other dogs during that period, has had a massive implication on what's happening. What can be happening today, I suppose, and it's so important, as you say, to make sure that dogs are trained, that you do understand their behaviours, you know what you should do and what you shouldn't do to prevent certain things from happening. Even whether it's dog abduction or whatever, in terms of dogs fighting each other or attacks in quotation marks or whatever. um, you know Keeping a dog on a lead at certain times is going to be beneficial in terms of preventing certain things from happening, whether that's them being abducted or running across the road and getting run over, or attacking a sheep, whatever it might be. So it's just, I suppose, recognizing what your dog needs and what it doesn't need, recognizing the spaces in which you are in with your dogs as well, is something which needs to be thought about more carefully. But yeah, it's definitely a very difficult situation, isn't it?
Yes, and when you think 20% of the 4 million dogs that arrived in this tight 3-year space, no thought had gone into the dog. What type of dog, how big was it going to grow? What was it originally bred to do? All of
Yeah,
these fundamental things. So a lot of ignorance, basically. So none of this is the fault of the dogs. So
no,
yeah, and I just hope it all falls out okay, because of course, it was the pandemic that fueled all of the dog theft, as it is still called,
yeah, yeah,
as well. But at least, in a way that's raised awareness for this campaign. And I actually agree with you in terms of the kept bill. When I looked at it as well, I thought, gosh, there's so many things in this. I mean,
Yeah,
what actually does this kept bill mean? You know, we're talking about livestock in it in 1 minute, and then we're talking about puppies being bred in Ireland and smuggled over in another second, and you know, tying in with the passport controls, and then there's dog abduction in there as well, and
yeah.
it was just all a bit of a muddle. I think not nearly clear enough. I don't think.
No, there was far too much in there which could then be requested for revisions could then be requested or opposition could be made. It's, had livestock export, which has, been long supported and long campaigned for. It had primates as pets, had zoo stuff in there as well in terms of improving standards and so forth. There's a lot of information in there. And if you think about how many stakeholders are involved and how, in certain instances, people will want to make changes to the bill at certain stages that works its way through the parliament. I think the thing which slipped up with this one was the fact I think it's in relation to dogs, leads, livestock, worrying, and so forth. And then certain dogs in the countryside which are off leads on a regular basis involved in fox hunting. So that ended up being the thing, the
Yeah,
sticking point, which has ended up the whole bill disappearing and just being dropped because there were controversial things there which probably wouldn't have been able to be amended. And it would have been presumably embarrassing in relation to what's being said in relation to the bill. All of it kind of, it's it's politics, isn't it? That's how politics works.
I
But
know.
it's just
It
such a
was the
shame. It's just
hunting, though.
such
It was the hunting that stopped
yeah.
it. I know, which, oh gosh, I've been so anti-hunting all my life, you know. And the funny thing is, at the moment, I mean, you know, I live in Hackney. I've got so many foxes. It's ridiculous. Well, that's why I think poor Gremlin fell foul too. Sadly, people are trying to poison me around here. I know, because there are too many, and they are wild. You know, they're wild animals, and but I don't think there are any in the Shires anymore, foxes. So I don't know. Where do you live, Dan? Do you ever see a fox in the wild? I don't know how hunting
Not
can
very
happen.
often. I'm based up at Keele, live in Keele Village in Staffordshire. So I don't think I've ever seen a fox up here. I've seen
Oh, come
badgers
to
and hedgehogs and loads of squirrels, but yeah,
yes.
never seen a fox around here.
Oh, well, come down to Hackney. Honestly, you'll have a blast. Seriously, I often have 4 or 5 in the garden at a time at the moment. It's a bit of a
Wow.
worry for me, though,
Mm.
actually, because a couple of times, you know, my little dog, Mr. Binks, you know, he's an English toy terrier, so he's very
Yeah.
small. He's not a lot bigger than a chicken. And I saw the vixen one morning coming down my garden path, literally stalking him. Poor
Oh.
little Mr. Binks, nicknamed Willie, had his tail tucked under his legs. But the
Oh.
interesting thing about him was he didn't run.
Hmm.
And you know that's the thing. You never run away. If you're frightened of a dog in a park, the worst thing you should do is ever run.
Yeah.
And Binks was proving that in reality. He had a fox 10 times bigger than him, basically just stalking behind him really slowly. But Binks was just doing a steady trot, steady trot. He wasn't going to go into a gallop because he knew if he galloped, the fox would gallop, and that would have been it. But luckily I caught it all through the window, banged on the window, and the vixen, she's gone now and left her cubs, you know, because obviously there's the maternal instinct with all animals goes at 8 weeks, and it's like, right, toodaloo, now you fend for yourself, you know, and that's also extremely interesting, which you all know, it's an animal geographer. But yes, so the foxes, I mean, it's such a conundrum. So yes, but I think you're absolutely right. It was still this political issue of who to stay on side with due to hunting, which, to be honest, I thought it was banned. Was it
Yeah,
unbanned?
it's meant to be banned, so it's under the Hunting Act. But I think there's so many loopholes within that which have been exploited and exposed over the past 2 decades almost now. So yeah, it's something which, but really, if changes want to be made in relation to that the bill would be that bill to be revised as opposed to the kept animals bill. But yeah, as I say, that's politics. But it's a case of just keeping on. It's keep on, being positive. And I think that's the main thing when it comes to animal campaigning. There's so many negative things which are happening, which a lot of the campaigns are trying to reduce from happening. It's just to be positive. You have to keep going. I know it's disappointing, but it's just a case of keep working with the people who are helping. Say good things about the politicians that are, raising their voice for against pet abduction, with the organisations who are helping share and so forth. every single member of the public who signs a petition. And people say, well, do government petitions really work anymore? Well, I think I think the pet theft reform campaign is a good example of showing how it does work. We've managed to get a pet theft task force created, which is pretty good. And then we managed to get the offence into the Kept Animals Bill. It will become law at some point. It's just the question is when. It's whether, I suppose, this government wants to do it or the next government wants to do it. It's not going to go away. Pets and dogs in particular being stolen is going to continue happening. There needs to be changes for it to start reducing. We've already started to see that after the lockdown, dog theft seemed to reduce. There seem to be more scams happening where people are thinking, well, I don't even need to steal a dog anymore. I can just say I have and scam money out of people. Luckily, the police are cracking down on that. But what we're starting to see is now the prices, they've come down, dogs and pups, but they're starting to go up a little bit more again. And I think what will happen eventually, obviously, there's still the lockdown dogs which are ending up in rescues for all the obvious reasons. But this is always going to be a low risk, high reward crime until there are changes to the law and changes to the way in which organizations react to this crime. So we need to keep going. We can't give up. There's too many families who are still searching for their stolen and abducted dogs and cats who are still searching. And that's the reason to keep going with this. It's the fact that there are dogs and cats which will be found due to the ongoing kind of media exposure. And that's important. I think it's about reuniting families. It's about helping future families get reunited with their pets more quickly. And it's also trying to deter the criminals from saying, we'll do this crime. During the lockdown, people, criminals, organized crime, this is, who would previously be doing stuff in relation to drugs, they were moving direction towards stealing dogs and puppy farms because it was a less risk in terms of if they were to be caught, the sentence they'd get. So, there's the people that do this, they're, very savvy in relation to the crimes in which they do. It's not something whereby you think, oh, they don't know anything. Of course they do. That's how they make money. It's how they live their lives. It's their careers.
Yeah.
So, they're going to do the best they can to make the most money. And if they are caught, they get the less sentence as possible.
Well, that's it. And, as you say, the price is going up. So, it depends how many puppies you're selling, that you've nicked and then you're reselling, it's going to add up, isn't it? It's worth doing it. The point is it's worth them, nasty people, taking the risk, I suppose.
Yeah. And if people, if people aren't buying dogs, people steal the dogs and then they'll ask for the reward money. And a lot of people will pay more reward money than people would actually buy for a new pup or a dog which has been, of a certain age. So I think there's still, because the way in which the crime is changing as well, I think it's something which it needs to be sorted out at this higher government level. And it's a change in law won't just stop this crime. As we mentioned earlier on, it's something where dogs are always going to be stolen and abducted, cats the same, for different reasons. But I think by starting to make these changes, sort of saying, look, we're taking this more seriously now. It's not a low risk, high reward crime. It's something where if you do get caught, you might end up with 2 years in prison, and it might make some, not everybody, it might make some think, well, actually, I'll do something else. I'll go back to stealing those TVs and laptops and plant pots or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But something has to happen because otherwise, people have been talking about this for, I don't know, 20 years. Look, Debbie Matthews, her dogs were stolen back in 2006, I think it was, Gizmo and Widget, from an M&S car park out of the car. She's been campaigning ever since, and nothing's changed yet. We need to, for people like Debbie, who's been campaigning so long, we need to say, look, we've got to the stage now where we've been promised these changes. We know they're the right thing to do. So why not just implement them? And then we can make further changes, which will be much easier to implement, working with the police, working with veterinary profession, working with database companies, and so forth.
Yeah, and I think the change in the law will really help on the database companies and connecting them with the vets. I mean, I just say, look, there's too many of these database companies. I mean, how confusing is it? Like, very. I think we need, as a way of helping, the whole dog problem. It sounds simplistic, but I just can't see why it can't happen. Just make it more DVLA, you know, so you have the software must exist that could be copied and transferred to dogs. You know,
Yeah,
you've got your microchip number, it's like your number plate. You know, it's like
yeah,
I can't see it's that difficult. And you know, change of ownership might happen, you know what I mean, but not considering a dog as a car here. I must just
yeah,
say that.
yeah, yeah.
But the technology, you know, you've got one database, and that way I think it would make it a lot more simple. And also, you know, sometimes it's quite difficult to change your microchip. You know, it actually costs some
Yeah.
money on some databases, and it is actually a bit more tricky than you think. So I had to move house a couple of times, you know, a few years ago, and it wasn't the easy one-click, easy peasy thing to do. I remember it
No,
took me over a day to do 3 pets, you know. So, and then people don't change the details, and that doesn't help. So
it's
there's a lot that needs to be changed, I think. It needs to be tightened up, particularly because we are now living with 11 million plus dogs in
yeah,
this country, and it's growing. And they are really, you know, now so integral in society, as you say. And we are living more isolated lives. Dogs bring us the best companionship possible, and they're the gateway to the outdoors and our stress busters. And we must
yeah.
never forget this.
Definitely, no, definitely. It needs to be sorted out. It's something, in terms of the microchipping situation, the campaign to make chips count, which is kind of built upon Fern's Law, which again is Debbie Matthews, Vets Get Scanning as well, and SAMPA and so forth. We had a petition a few years back. I think we got about 25,000 signatures to make chips count. And what we want is a centralized database, which the authorities can access. So at the moment, I've lost count of how many database companies are. I think it's 22 or 23, which is far too many. It started off with a few, and now there's ever growing numbers. But that centralized database whereby, vets and police, rescues, wardens can access and get that information rather than having to sort of scan the chip, get the number, put the number into the internet to find out the check chipper, and then phone up the whichever database it is. Some of them don't answer the phone. They're meant to. You have to email them. Then some of them take ages to email back. It's just a really, really long, convoluted, complicated, ineffective system at the moment. And what's really scary is they're adding cats to it.
Right. Well,
Seeing that as a really amazing thing. It is
right.
amazing that they are being added. I think cats should be microchipped. That should be compulsory, and it should go into these databases. But there should be a centralized database. It should be simple. It should be effective. It shouldn't just be a case of you have to do this. What we need to think about is what happens if your pet gets missing or is abducted.
Exactly. Well, Dan, look, everyone's got to sign the petition. I've so enjoyed this chat, and let's stay in touch. And I really would love to do an update on the progress of this. And I really hope government, sharpens its pencil.
Yeah, thank you ever so much. And I know you've been an ongoing, long supporter of pet theft reform, so really do appreciate it. You've helped loads over the years, so thank you ever so much, and thanks for having me on the show.
No, thank you. That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, it is really good what Dr. Dan Allen, along with SAMPA and Vets Get Scanning, are doing to make change and to recognise pets as sentient beings, and with much harder consequences for these organised criminals. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again to Dr. Dan Allen for joining us today. Please sign the petition. The link is in the show notes. Thanks again, of course, to Mike Hansen, my producer, for all the music and production as ever. And find out more about him at Pod People UK. And I'm just at Anna Web Dogs. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. We will be back in your feed next Sunday. So why don't you subscribe? Because guess what? It's free. And that way, you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.